So I think, aren't we the only species that want, crave and desire and create surplus? So, you know, the idea that we don't trust the universe enough to provide, that we have to store things and make more than we need and own more than we need, is a huge fear and trust issue. But you see, domination culture is all about fear. It's a fear energy. So when I talk about the spectrum of we're all affected by it and it traumatizes all of us, here's the difference. At one end of that spectrum, you know, you have First Nations, Indigenous, Native American people, for example, who had everything taken away from them. They had a price put on their head. Now, the trauma and the damage of that is huge. And, you know, we can't look at that as something that happened and is over, because even today, Native American families are 5 times more likely to have their children taken into care. And the damage that was done, the damage that was done has affected their diet, has affected the way they live, it's affected their own justice systems, it's affected everything. And then around that same sort of end of the spectrum, damage and therefore trauma of slavery, you know, that then gets passed down generations. There's, you know, healing from these things can take several generations, and you've got to have the tools to do the healing. You've got to know what the healing looks like. And then as we go along that spectrum, then there are other people that have suffered, other people that are suffering, but maybe you know, like I would say that growing up in the slums and the way we were treated, but you see, my skin is white, so I don't necessarily suffer the damage quite as much because the discrimination isn't quite as obvious, right? I can assimilate into something. And then we start moving along the scale to the people in power, the people that have the power or are motivated by greed. I mean, that's an interesting word. Motivated by the fear of not having enough and therefore having far too much. And we started to call that privilege. So we started to call that privilege. And what's happening is the people who can afford it can buy themselves more and more cushions. They buy themselves cushions to surround themselves so that they don't have to do the work. And they're running away from themselves is what I've found. And then therefore, because they have the privilege of not having to do the work, they enact the trauma through the misuse of power and authority.